Welcome. It is Monday evening, 8 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. You know what that means. It means I forgot to turn my light on. There we go. Cheap Chinese remote controls for these LED lights. Anywho, welcome to the show, everybody. It is Monday night. You know what that means, especially on this beautiful day, the April 13th. It's a beautiful day down here in Southern Ontario, and I dressed in my best. I got my Kirkland, what's it called? Kirkland signature sweater on, which can only mean one thing. It's rankings night, ladies and gentlemen, and everybody in between. It is available. The rankings are available through the link in the chat. You can check them out. You can peruse. You can look. Also, I will also mention I made the migration over to Streamlabs. I used to use Streamlabs like years ago, and I use OBS ever since. And now I'm trying to pivot away back to Streamlabs because I did kind of like it, and they had some cool features that I missed, and definitely not not entirely working one-to-one, which I didn't expect, but we're up and rolling. We're looking good. Everything seems pretty solid, so that's good. Avoid that feedback there. But anyway, welcome to the show. Yes, it's rankings night. So for anyone who is unfamiliar, I do NHL draft rankings. I watch these guys all kinds of times over the course of a season. And what we're going to do is we're just going to go through it tier by tier, from top to bottom, or bottom to top, whatever you guys would prefer. But anyway, we're going to get into this. Let's have a look. Let's see here. Let's see. How do I do this? We'll go screen share mode here. So the rankings are here. And let's just do this. So ignore who cares about all the writing, whatever. It doesn't matter. I just realized that this is not the full version, but whatever. So the full version is paywalled for subscribers. Obviously, I'm not going to show that live on camera to everybody, but if you want write-ups for every single player all the way down to the bottom of the list here, all the way down to the watch list, you can get that through any tier of subscription over at scouching.ca. But for now, you get the first 4 tiers, which are the top 30 on my list. So you can do full detailed write-ups on every single player if you want. You can see all of them and read to your heart's content and form your opinions from here. Exactly. Ignore all the words, kids. Ignore all the words. All right, so let's get right into this. We'll spend some time going through this and wait for you all to formulate your questions and hurl your insults my way. All right, but yeah, let's take a look. So top tier probably won't surprise very many people. Stenberg and McKenna here. These are guys that I've just seen recently. I went back and watched all my video that I've pulled on both of these guys. Going back to October when they started really playing. McKenna's case, it would be more like November. But I feel pretty good about these guys being 1-2. But honestly, by the end of the year, I feel like things might shift a little bit from here, even based on, I do really think that the second tier has really given the first tier a really, really good push, and it's going to be an interesting last little couple of months here. Stenberg obviously is not going to be playing anymore outside of his time with Frölunda. Unless he goes to the World Championships, it's entirely possible both these guys go to the World Championships. That will be very interesting, and I'm sure every NHL team with any sniffing chance at landing one of them will be watching them at that tournament if they're both there. I believe McKenna is probably at least going to get an invite, and we'll see what happens. But for me, because I know the inevitable question's going to come, like what's the difference between Stenberg and McKenna that puts Stenberg ahead of McKenna? And in all honesty, it really just comes down to, a number of things, really. Watching Stenberg, the thing about these two guys is that with McKenna, there is very clearly a way that he does things that is very, very high end, that is very rare and very difficult to find out there. The skill level is immense. His playmaking ability is second to none. But when I go and watch Stenberg, and this is true when I went back and watched him in the last week or so, he has a feel for the game on both sides of the puck that I just don't think McKenna has right now. And it's been so long where I've been waiting for that out of McKenna that I feel like Stenberg has just shown a little bit more. And what I mean by that is things like attacking the middle of the ice with the puck and just managing to get the puck through legs, through layers of defenders, protecting the puck along the boards, extending possessions in the offensive zone, grinding play along the boards, just that difficult side of the game that I feel like Stenberg has a little bit more comfort with. It's not a huge difference, and that's why they're in the same tier. And if you want McKenna first, I totally understand why. I feel like it is entirely possible that he scores a ton in the National Hockey League and does so relatively quickly. And if that's what you're into and if that's what you're looking for, then so be it. There's no problem. There's no problem with any of that. I totally get it. But my whole thing is just that I'm looking for players that are really dependable in as many areas of the game as possible. And when I look at Stenberg, I just see a guy who goes out there, and while he might not be a superstar in the NHL, I think he'll be a very, very, very valuable two-way guy with really good offensive instincts, really good offensive ability. And the way I'd split it too is McKenna might have the dangles, McKenna might have the really high-end playmaking and creativity and everything, but at the end of the day, they both achieve similar things in different ways. Stenberg does manage to make plays himself. He does manage to drive possession himself. He has I think, better off-puck game than McKenna does. And the shot selection with Stenberg is also quite a bit better and at a much more difficult level of play in the Swedish Hockey League this year. There's no slouch. There's no slouch there with Stenberg. And with McKenna, I think there are question marks. And so for me, I lean Stenberg, but it's really, really close. The really interesting stuff, though, starts in tier 2 for me. I mean, this is a pretty big tier for the rest of the top 10. I really think we're on track for that sort of 2021 style of draft where there's a bunch of guys that end up pretty valuable in the NHL for one reason or another, and they all bring sort of a good level of value with the things that they're good at. And they're all good at kind of different things by and large, right? I know for a fact that there are people who are going to be blown away that I have Tynan Lawrence where I have him, but I've seen him so much this year, and going back and looking at the video that I've pulled, and I watched another game of him last week without tracking the data. I feel pretty confident that he is one of the most undervalued players in the class. I mean, I've just seen him so much, and I simply refuse to just look at his point production and go, well, it was fun while it lasted. I guess he's a failure. I've said this a bunch of times, but we're in a new world. It's a new world, right? The WHL, the OHL, and the QMJHL are bleeding talent. We saw another report today that Cam Reed and Jack Nesbitt, who will both be 19 next year, they're both going to college. Those are two high-end OHL players for next year, you would think, going to the NCAA when they otherwise would probably be back in the CHL again. And that is a pretty big shift to just those two guys, but there are more coming. It's happening. And the NCAA is seeing a large influx of 17-year-old players who it's very uncharted that players that young are in the NCAA. And I mean, look, I watched the Frozen Four. I watched all of the Frozen Four, both semifinal games and the finals. I don't know how you don't watch that league, that level, and go, yeah, this is where you want to be. Like, I don't know how you do that. I think at the end of the day, you're looking at the premier location for anybody to go between 17 and 19 to develop as a hockey player in the NCAA. And those middling programs, those lower end programs over time, I think are only going to get better, trying to compete with the higher end ones that are clearly just stockpiling so much talent. And so when I see a guy like Tynan Lawrence, and I just realized I still have him listed as a Muskegon player here, but when I look at Tynan Lawrence, I just see a guy who went to the NCAA on a team that really needed a guy like him. And I think he is a player who just drove such great results. The numbers speak for themselves in my data work. He drove really good playmaking results. There was just not a whole lot for him that really was surrounding him outside of Cole Hudson on that team. Boston University was underperforming this year relative to normal. Tynan Lawrence was put in a really tough position, especially halfway through the year, missing, the first quarter of the year with injury. And I don't think you could have asked for much more out of him. And over time, I think he just looked more and more comfortable in the NCAA. And to the point where for a draft that is pretty weak up the middle, and everybody is focused on Caleb Malhotra, I think that's the wrong guy to be focused on. I think that if you want a dynamic, pacey, physical, good two-way up-the-middle center that will glue a line together, Lawrence is your guy. And I'm just so convicted of that belief. I'm so convinced at this point that I just don't care what anybody thinks. I've loved how he's played. And I think the more I watch, the more I love. And at the very, very least, the more I just am convinced that he, at the very least, is one of the 7 or 8 best players in this draft. And if you're getting him in the teens, I think you're getting a steal. Viggo Bjork is also nipping at his heels, really, 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 really close. Bjork has come a long way this year from the beginning of the year. Even going back to last year, I thought he was a tough to project player. He's small. The skating ability was a question. He was playing center down in the junior league last year quite often, and I just didn't know if that was going to happen at higher levels. But here we are. He's playing first line center, or at least top 6 center for an SHL team. Not looking out of place doing it. A much, much better skater than he was 12 months ago, let alone 6. A player who is also quite young. A guy who probably isn't done growing either when you do your homework. I don't think he's done growing. And the smarts on him are pretty incredible. I really love what Viggo Bjork brings to the table. And I think for me, again, I've seen him as low as the teens, and I think that's, if you're going to be in a draft class where Tynan Lawrence, Viggo Bjork, and even a Mathis Preston are available in the middle of the first round through the late, maybe even early second round, I would trade down if I had a really high pick and just take everything other teams had to offer and just try to capture those guys in the middle of the round, because I still just cannot believe how they've flown under the radar, especially Bjork. I get it. He's 5'9" or whatever, but you don't notice when he's on the ice. And I can promise you that. You barely ever notice it. He's not perfect. I think there's room to grow there, both on the ice and physically. And that's not abnormal. And I think we're looking at a really, really intriguing development study there over the next few years. Albert Smits at number 5 is my number 1 defenseman, a guy who I've loved going back to last season. I first saw him at the under 18s and thought he looked really good for a Latvian team that really didn't look incredible. And he looked awesome. He looks really, really good. The first couple games I saw him this year were at the junior level in Finland, which was a joke to him. It was just not a good spot for him to be. He went to Liga immediately and played a ton on a team that was not very good. And his numbers and the track data for me is just so good. He's a guy who I think is very, very mobile, gets around the ice really well, monitors the ice well, jumps into the offensive zone at good times, has good puck protection ability. He's not short. He's a guy who has a lot of skill too. He's not necessarily this sort of uber high-end playmaker. He's not this uber high-end sort of skilled defenseman like Xavier Villeneuve, who we'll get to in a second. But just his overall impact on the game is really, really good. Oh, one moment. Okay, my apologies. We had a little home scare that needed to be dealt with, but in any way, I apologize for that. That was a little strange. But all is well. For a second there, we did not think all is well, but right now, all is well. So thanks. Welcome back. Let's get back into it. Where were we here? Yeah, something about Albert Smits. I mean, I think Smits is a good one, a really, really intriguing player who has a lot of two-way instincts, really, really good sort of offensive zone instincts. I apologize if I'm a little, a little crazy. But, yeah, I mean, Smits is an interesting one. I think that an NHL team is going to get a pretty good top four defenseman there. I've always compared him, to that Brent Burns type of defenseman who's a bit of a rover. He likes to go for a skate. He likes to go and do stuff. And sometimes, I mean, I don't think it very often burns him. His defensive numbers are quite good, all things considered. I think if he gets a bit stronger, he will be doing just fine. But then I've got Xavier Villeneuve at 6. I mean, I've seen a bunch of them. He can be frustrating, but if he hits, man, he's going to hit hard. Super skilled, extremely dynamic, extremely crafty and mobile, and just a really, really good overall player who just pins, he pins the offensive numbers in a positive direction, unlike so many other defensemen that I've tracked. I see him as a more advanced version of what Lane Hudson was at this age. I really don't think that there's a whole lot to really be concerned about when you sort of zoom out. I know I've seen people poking at him and prodding at him and all the giveaways and all the sort of issues there. But I mean, in my experience, for every giveaway he's had 5 or 6 absolutely bananas offensive plays that I just can't help but see happening in the NHL and looking real good doing it. I think at the end of the day, I think he's a really, 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 really high-end offensive defenseman that is just the exact type of defenseman that the NHL continuously goes, well, we missed on that guy. We shouldn't do that again. And then the next one comes along and blows the doors off and they skip him again. And, watching him at the under 18s last year, the Hlinka last year, the under, the CHL NTDP series this year, all of his time with Blainville, Boisbriand. The last game I saw was a little bit of a question mark for sure, but all in all, like start to finish, I mean, he's been really, really good. I've got one more game of his to track between now and the end of the year, and I'm going to be really excited to see him wherever he goes in the draft. I don't even know. So he's not at 2 like he was at the beginning of the year, but that's not necessarily because he's been not so good, but because guys like Schmitz and Bjork and Lawrence and have all been really, really, really good, and it just knocks him down quite a few pegs. But at the end of the day, I love him. This one's tricky. I mean, a lot of people seem to be a little bit off the Verhoff wagon, and I'll tell you this, right? That game, when I watched the Frozen Four, that game with North Dakota, they did not play very well as a whole team, but also at the same time, and this is just me talking, all right? I think one thing that we really need to think about and remember, is not only is the NCAA better than it ever has been, but a really important thing is sometimes in hockey, a team that doesn't necessarily show up can also be a team. They could also be playing a team that is playing at about 100% of their capacity. And when I watched Wisconsin in that game and the final against Denver, that team was firing. That was a V12 engine firing on all 12 cylinders. I don't know how you as a defenseman at 17 years old are supposed to handle that with any sort of, like my expectations were pretty limited for a guy like Verhoff this year because he's barely 17. He's going to college. He's on a really good North Dakota team. They played him a lot. And I think, again, like it is a very different paradigm. And it's almost, look, I think about it this way, right? When we look at players in Europe, and they play in the SHL or they play in Liga or whatever, and they don't score 100 points in a season, we don't look at them through the lens of like, well, they were disappointing, right? You have to look at them through the lens of like how they play and what they bring to the game, where the areas of improvement might be. And where things might go. And I think we have to start doing that with the NCAA, especially with these 17-year-olds. Like, it's not the same as it was 2 years ago, even last year, right? It's just not the same. And I think it's a great thing for the sport, but I do think you really have to be careful if you're going to write off a guy like Verhoff this early in his career when he put himself into such a difficult position. Keaton Verhoff could have gone to the Victoria Royals and probably scored 90 points this year. He could have scored 40 goals, right? Who knows? And nobody would care. He might be 3 on people's boards instead. But because he challenged himself, and because at times he did look a little overwhelmed, especially, I would argue, in that last game, that maybe if that's enough for you to get off the bus, then so be it. But when I watch Verhoff, I see a guy who has really good defensive habits in general. He covers ice pretty well. I don't think his skating in terms of explosiveness and in terms of his explosiveness and offensive jump, like, I don't think that's quite there yet. He's very pass heavy. He's very needs to think quickly and execute plays quickly, and that does open him up to vulnerabilities on forechecks and all that stuff, and that is where he struggled a little bit. But when you see him protecting the puck, when you see him with skill moves off the boards, or the playmaking vision he has in the offensive zone, the shot that he has, which he, in my experience, very rarely used, which I don't think is a bad thing. It's all a really good package. And I think with Verhoff, I think if you're patient, I think you'll be greatly rewarded with a very, very solid, efficient 50-50 two-way defenseman who has some physical tools. He needs to get stronger. But I do really think Verhoff is a guy who people are writing off awfully quickly, all things considered. I don't know. Again, I say this almost every show at this point, but I'm sure there's a lot of new people watching. I just really do believe that the NCAA is giving guys a real wake-up call of this is what hockey actually is like at the highest levels. And the CHL is, we see it all the time. Like, you're seeing younger players trend into that league. There are rumors that the OHL and Q are going to lower the age of their draft to match the WHL, which lowers the age of the draft, even if there are the same rules in the WHL. Like, that league is slowly morphing into generally an under 18 league. It might take a while, but they're getting there. And you're seeing a lot of 18-year-olds going, you know what, instead of going back, I'm going to go to college. And I think that's the right call. And I think it really affects the way the landscape looks. And I really do think that with a guy like Verhoff, he doesn't turn 18 until after the draft. He's got great size, and I think there's physical development left to go. I think he's got really, really impressive offensive instincts for a big guy, and I think he can make it work. You got to be patient, but he's got a long runway ahead of him. A lot of these other guys are a lot older, right? Schmitz and Verhoff are quite on the older side. Same thing with Chase Reed. But I think Keaton Verhoff in a year, like, Verhoff would be a freshman next year. So you're going to have to look through the lens of, like, if you drafted him from Victoria this year and sent him to North Dakota next year, what are you kind of hoping to see out of him, right? That to me is an absolute game changer. And I think that's a lens that we really have to be careful about, because for a 17-year-old in the NCAA, that's a very different world than an 18-year-old in the NCAA. We saw it with Cullen Potter last year, right? So you got to be really careful. And with Verhoff, I'm leaning into that thesis pretty hard, but I've seen him a bunch and I'm pretty confident. Malte Gustafsson has grown on me all throughout the year. He has just gotten better and better and better. Honestly, I felt like his worst hockey this year was when he was at the junior level, which was very strange and very unusual. But at the end of the day, with Verhoff, or with Gustafsson, I think in terms of defensive projection to the NHL, I don't think there are many other defensemen this year that look as good as he does in the way that NHL coaches are looking for. Stick first defense with good physical with a good physical ability to erase guys along the boards, good gap management, good lane management, all kinds of good things in his game, good habits, bits of skill, and lots to really, really like. I really, really think that Malte Gustafsson is also, he's a young guy, very, very skinny. The physical development potential is very, very strong with him. And if he comes along in the next year, anything remotely close to as much as how much he came along this year, I think he might not be the most exciting offensive defenseman, but defensively, he's going to be worth it no matter what. Like all of these defensemen, I think are a reasonable projection as a top 4, top pair in a pinch, but probably more middle pair guys that can fill a role and do really well at it. And Gustafsson, I think, will be the guy that just sort of floats along and plays 1,000 games and you never really notice, but he's just really effective. Pick your favorite defenseman that's kind of like that. And he kind of reminds me of that guy. Chase Reed at 9. I like Chase Reed a lot. But I do think that he is a little bit more limited than is being led on. I think in terms of rushing the puck up the ice outside of Villeneuve, he's probably the best one at it. Just the misdirection, the skill, the edges on his feet, the ability to shake off opponents and protect the puck. It's really high end with him. Again, similar to Verhoff, but maybe not as strong of a playmaker, just the way he's able to look off guys and make plays inside and just drive good offensive results. I like a lot of what he brings to the table, but the issues sort of come in the defensive zone for me with Reed and his willingness to really drive a lot of offense through point shots, which I don't find are immensely threatening. They're decent, but I wouldn't say it's a hallmark of his game that's likely to blow the doors off the league. So at the end of the day, I like Reed, but I feel like at the point where I would draft him anyway, like I'm pretty certain that I would rather have Gustafsson, Villeneuve, Bjork, Lawrence, all these guys, and they're probably all gone after Reed anyway. But I think if you really like him, I can see why. I just am I'm a little bit more limited on what I see out of Reed, and I think I see a little bit more downside there than I think a lot of other people do. The meme of the draft for me, Mathis Preston. I had him at 1 in December, and I had a lot of people reaching out to me about that one. And I think that the more I saw this year, the more questions I had. And I think also it's like a lot of guys really came along this year. I felt Gustafsson, even Villeneuve, Smits, Bjork and Lawrence all really developed well this year and caught up to Preston. I still love Preston. I think he's a fantastic player and probably at this point the most underrated player in the class. The skill, the in terms of like players in this draft class that have the potential, not certainty, but the potential to be superstars in the NHL. That list, it's not very long, but it's probably like McKenna, Preston, like maybe Villeneuve. Like in terms of pure excitement and offensive ability, offensive skill, Preston is the guy. He is an incredible combination of speed and skill. He's a better playmaker than people give him credit for. He is a fantastic shooter, even if his shot selection is a little bit questionable. His defensive game, I really would want to interview him personally and get a good gauge on capturing that competitiveness out of his game, where I feel like there's a lot of moments in his game where you just wish there was a little bit more engagement because he's capable. I still go back to a few times I've seen him where his team in Spokane were losing and things were out of hand, and all of a sudden he comes out as a physical, energetic guy that's throwing his weight into people and all that stuff. So he's capable of these things. It's just a matter of the consistency there and the willingness to do it. With Vancouver, like, when he was with that team, he had points on 45% of their goals this year. You wouldn't know that just by looking at his point production. Caleb Malhotra's number was 28, right? In terms of generating offense, Preston is amazing at it. And I love him. I think that if he's a second round pick, I am laughing all the way to the bank by taking a swing on him at that point. Like the pure ability. I can only imagine what he'll do with the under 18s. I can only imagine, because if it's anything like a Salinka tournament appearance, if you still see a second round pick at that point, I don't know what to tell you. But or a late first round pick at that point, I don't know what to tell you. But I'm a huge fan of Mathis Preston, and we can keep going down the board here to the third tier. So the third tier is just a lot of really fun, skilled guys that I think could project really, really well, even if there is some downside risk. Novotny, Cullen, Hermanson, Belchitz, and Malhotra. Malhotra's the flavor of the week, and he has been that for about a month now. Look, I know he's scoring a lot in the playoffs. I watched one of the playoff games he had, the game one against North Bay the other day. I thought he was fine. I think there are things in Malhotra's game that he does that are definitely projectable to the NHL, right? If you want a guy who can throw a reverse hit, he'll do it, right? If you want a guy who can get up the ice and, take a hit, make a play, he can do it. But I've seen so much of him this year. And when you zoom out and look at the overall results, I have a lot of problem with his defensive game. And again, I don't mean to sound like I hate the player or wish they were going to fail in their career or something, but I'm just calling it like I see it with regards to strengths and areas of improvement. And I'm not going to lie. And when it comes to a guy like Malhotra, you have to look through the lens of like, if it is possible that this guy goes top 3, you have to look through the lens of, is this one of the best players in the world for his age? This is the exact same story to me as a Caleb Desnoyers last year, coincidentally also named Caleb. But I have similar feelings about Malhotra as I do about Desnoyers. There's a physical edge to their game. They can make a play. They're pretty good playmakers. I would argue that Desnoyers was more active as a playmaker, but in an easier league. They're pretty physical players and they make some interesting things happen, but top 5 pick to me is just, it's too much. I think it's just too much. But he has grown on me quite a bit over the course of the year. And in a draft light on centers, I think he's a pretty projectable one. But again, like, I don't think he's going to end up too much higher than this. I look at my top 10 and I just haven't seen enough out of Malhotra where I'm putting him ahead of those guys. Maybe I'll live to regret that decision, but I just, it's the way she goes. I mean, I constantly wonder what a player like that would look like in the NCAA instead this year, and I just don't know. And if you want to make the argument, well, he was in the BCHL last year and that's a big leap, well, you got to give the same leeway to the other players that are jumping around straight into the NCAA. So the other guys, though, Novotny, Cullen, and Hermanson especially, are just fun. They're really, really fun hockey players. Novotny, I think his second half has been, ever since going to the World Juniors, and it's weird how this happens, but his second half, in my opinion, has been a lot stronger. He's looked a lot better and more engaged and more physical and a lot more intense on both sides of the puck than I remember during the year. He looks a lot more like the version of him that I remember from when he was 16 or 17. And I think there's a lot to like about Novotny there. And at the end of the day, he's a guy who I think brings a lot of skill, but energy and off puck scoring ability that gives him a lot of tools in his toolkit that could really work out for him. Wyatt Cullen has just, it's one of those things where it's like, I'll watch other players and I'll go, I kind of like Cullen more. And Cullen just sort of has stuck in this range for me for months. Every time I watch him, I see a kid who has that next level sort of confidence and creativity with the puck on his stick. He's able to drag the puck around opponents and shake them off and work into open space really well and create really intriguing ideas. And he does it against NCAA competition too, from the games I've seen this year. Just a really dynamic offensive winger that I would love to see, definitely improve his skating ability, get more explosive and all of that stuff. That's the main sort of gap in his game. And I think it is something big enough where it could really hold him back. But I always value players on where they could be at their ceiling. And if Wyatt Cullen hits, he's going to be awesome. The skill level he's got a great shot that I think he could use a little bit more, pushing into the scoring areas a little bit more than he does. But the playmaking ability is really, really strong, and I think there's a lot to like there. Hermanson is very similar in a way, just a lot of skill, really fast, really fun to watch, really creative. I think he grew a lot mentally this year. The first few months he was a little bit spooky with the sort of overhandling, not giving too much off the puck defensively and all that stuff that young, really talented junior players sometimes may take a little bit too easily. But in the last little while, I think he's looked really, really good. I imagine he's going back to Moto next year and playing a lot, and I imagine he'll be a useful part of that team. Not that he wasn't this year, but I like a lot of what Hermanson brings to the game in terms of speed and skill. Belchet's, I mean, he's basically right where I left him. I don't know still what I think about Belchet's or what I think he's going to be. Watching the video back for him, for the report that I did on him, you see a lot of things, I think, in his game that I was more impressed looking at him then than I was in preparation for this ranking. like Belchet's is a guy who, you know, I still think there's a ways to go with his development. I don't think he's done in terms of like, you know, getting faster and more agile, but what he does really well, he does really well. Like if you want him as that sort of complementary neutral zone pass target, you know, guy who can stretch out the ice, catch a puck, catch it in stride, get up the ice, move the puck around a layer or two of defensemen, get down into the offensive zone, make a play, make something happen. He's really good at it. I think he's really, really good at it. And that's projectable. That's useful. He's very big, and that's great. He's got a great shot. That's great. There's a lot that Belchet's does that I really, really like. And I think at the end of the day, I don't know where he's going to go in the draft. I've heard all kinds of things about what NHL teams think of him. If you really love him, I totally see why. If you don't believe in him, I also totally see why. I think he's going to find a way to make something happen in the NHL. I see him as maybe more of a dual threat version of like a Matthew Wood, where there's, you know, the skating is a bit of an issue and his escape speed is kind of an issue, but it almost doesn't matter because if they use their size effectively, if they use their skill effectively and they can finish really well, then who cares? And I think he's a pretty good example of that. And I don't know. I really, really like what Belchet's brings to the table. Scrolling down, tier 4 is the rest of the first round. I'm not going to go into detail on all of these guys. If you want to hear about specific players, you can definitely let me know. But who are the ones that I want to kind of go over here? I'm not even sure. I mean, Piparinen dropped quite a bit, but that's not necessarily because he wasn't very good. It's just that, you know, there's a lot of defensemen in this range. Him, Golier, I'd argue Carroll's, Lynn maybe, and Håkansson. Those are all defensemen who I think their defensive game is a strength, and the offensive side of the game is a little more hit or miss and a little bit more questionable, especially Piparinen. And I just, with him, I love the smarts. I think I would be very not surprised if he developed really, really, really well. And I definitely wouldn't be surprised if Piparinen, you know, turned into more of a two-way presence. But in terms of stable defense, you know, puck retrievals, controlling the possession of the puck, working off of teammates and working off of his pair mate and chipping in defensively, being in the right lanes, being in the right spots. He's really good at that stuff. And I've really, really liked Piparinen this year. So even though he's dropped quite a bit relative to December, I'm not super concerned about it. I think he's looked pretty darn good. Someone mentions Blale. Blale, yeah, I mean, I've watched a lot of him. I've mentioned this on the show before, but with Blale, I watched a lot of Cole Hudson in the last couple of months, watching a lot of Tynan Lawrence and a lot of Boston University, and watching a Tommy Blale, I kind of see echoes there, where, you know, in terms of aggressive offensive defensemen who push into the offensive zone, they're aggressive, they challenge guys, they're deceptive, they're shifty, but they always are trying to keep things in motion as much as possible. Could Blale get to that kind of a Cole Hudson level player in 4 years or something? I bet it's possible. I bet it's possible. With Blale, though, I think the bigger issues, though, are I think he is this sort of dynamic, high skill, high ceiling defenseman who I've had people reach out and tell me I'm wrong on this, but I've watched so much of him and I just still feel like his defensive zone and defensive rush play is really, really questionable. You can chip and chase around him too easily. You can beat him down low too easily. You know, he is a guy who plays a little small. And if that scares teams, I would not be surprised. But in terms of just the pure excitement factor in his game and his ability to carry the puck and his ability to play around with it in the offensive zone, he's pretty good at it. And so for me, it's like, if there are players I'm genuinely very excited about, I've got to put them somewhere in this range. You know, I really do think that there's a good player there. I think it's a high risk bet though. But I do really like him. I think he's an interesting one. And it's just a matter of the likelihood that you think he's going to hit his ceiling. Because I think there's a really low floor, but the ceiling is really, really, really high. Victor Plante is right where I left him at 22. I love him. I think he is an extraordinarily interesting, sort of dynamic, almost Zach Benson-like player who is very, very aggressive, very physical, very good off the puck, and no slouch with his playmaking. I'd love for him to be a little more dynamic like Benson was at this age. That's why I don't have Plante as high as I had Benson back in his draft year. But in terms of just a guy that you put over the bench and he's going to give you a really good hard playing shift with good physical energy and selfless playmaking and good offensive generation, Plante is a really good player. And I've really liked him for years now. And I think that if he's a guy that's available in the late second into the third round or something, yeah, that seems like a no-brainer to me. Who else do I want to go over here? I mean, Verdi Svensk, I've heard people, after, over the last few months, people have been, a little bit aggressive about him to me. And I mean, I don't care. In the last number of games he's played in Liga, he's playing on the wing, which is very strange. And when you watch him at the junior level there, he's got points on 37% of his team's goals. You watch him down there, and he is dominant offensively. Just a skating level and a skill level in conjunction that is more than a step beyond everybody he's playing against at that level. I liked him back at the under-18s last year for Finland. I thought he also looked really good playing for the under-20 team this year. I would expect him to be on the World Junior team next year, I would hope. And I just feel like with Svensk, there's just so much to dig into. Like in terms of a skilled, mobile, offensive defenseman who is no slouch defensively either. He is more physical than you might think. He just looks small. He's not really that small, but he looks thin and I just feel like that can trick you, because when I watch Svensk, I see a really impressive player with a ton of skill, some really good offensive ability. Honestly, that last couple of games he played on the wing for his team in Finland, he looked like a winger. He did not look like a defenseman that was out of position and a little overwhelmed and all that stuff. I thought he looked really impressive as a winger in a men's league, and that's not easy to do. So, it's really strange. He's a really strange case study, but I am betting on the fundamentals in his game. If he's a guy that's third, fourth, fifth round at this point, you could do a lot worse, I think. By the way, shout out Farm Boy. I believe this is their Clementine carbonated beverage, and it's like orange Fanta, but it doesn't make you hate yourself, which at 35 years old is very important. I must throw that out there. It's really good. So if you're ever in a Farm Boy, check it out. Makes me want to try the other ones. Brand loyalty is so rare in this day and age, but boy, Farm Boy really knows how to do it. We'll talk about Adam Anderson, and then we'll go to the next tier, and then we'll go to, you can read the rest, and we'll get into the questions here. We're almost at an hour in, even though I had to disappear, which again, I apologize for. But Adam Anderson, if we're in a paradigm where there is just a lack of centers in this year's draft class, which I believe there is, him and Morozov, I could very easily see, especially Morozov, I could see going off the board relatively quickly. But Anderson is one that I simply just can't believe people haven't noticed or picked up on any more than they already have. Like, Anderson was weird. For the first little bit of the year, I liked him last year, but for the first little bit of this year, it almost was like he didn't know what he was capable of. He was playing very timid, very passive, very perimeter. A very perimeter style of play, just a whole lot of things where I'm just sort of sitting there scratching my head going like, something's weird going on here. I don't know what's going on. And over the last few months when I've watched him, I don't know what got into him, but it seems like someone sat him down and said, hey man, by the way, you're good at this, and you're big, and you're skilled, and you're fast. Use those talents. Be physical. Attack the middle of the ice. Play hard. You can do it. And he has been doing it. He hasn't been rewarded on the score sheet, but I'm not worried about it. It's the same story almost as Tinusla Koblar last year, who I had at 50, I think, last year. And he was a guy who wasn't scoring a ton last year either at the junior level, but all the signs were there that there was offensive upside, and he's gone well beyond what I expected this year based on how he's played in the SHL. And with Anderson, I would have loved to see him get a little bit of a chance at that part of the world. in the SHL and get a little bit of ice time there, because I would have loved to see what he was capable of there. But I guess we'll just have to wait till next year. But if you're in a year where you're going, boy, there's not a whole lot of centers, I don't know what more you could want. He's big. He's got a lot of skill to him as well. He's an aggressive offensive zone player now. He's selfless with his playmaking. He's a really, really good transition presence. He's got a bit of a physical edge to him that I would love to see exacerbated. I think there's a lot to like, and he is very young. He's a July birthday. He's going to the under-18s, and just like Preston, I would not be surprised to see people go, oh, this Anderson guy is interesting. Wow, where did he come from? Because he just looks like a guy an NHL team would really, really like. And people, I don't know what the deal is with him, but it seems like people are still sleeping on him. But that's a guy that I've really, really liked. And Morozov is similar. I think Morozov is definitely more defensive leaning. I don't expect a whole lot of stuff out of Morozov, but whenever I watch him play, I finish the game and I go, yeah, I'll take that guy on my team, like, and I don't mean that like flippantly or disrespectfully. I legitimately watch him and I go, you know what? Like, there's not a whole lot of like, and then what in his game, but what he does well is that sort of physical side of the game. He's a pretty good skater that monitors up the middle of the ice really well. He can move the puck okay. There's a lot of things that are in his game that are just good. Nothing incredible, but at the end of the day, I think with a guy like Morozov, an NHL team is going to get something out of him. Is he going to score more than 30 points in a season? I don't know. I don't expect that, but I think you're going to get a pretty valuable defensive center who can definitely play a physical role that you definitely need in this day and age, and I think he could be pretty good at it. So I'll let you peruse the rest. Again, if you want full write-ups on every single player in this list from top to bottom, you can go to your subscription page and get your subscription. And at any tier in the blog for supporters and partners, you'll get access to the full write-up for everybody, and you can read my thoughts on absolutely everybody, all the way down to Alexander Grunin. So yeah, all in all, I think this is a very intriguing draft class. I have spent a lot of time looking at previous draft classes, and something I try to think I do relatively well is be honest with sort of the vibe that I get watching these guys and looking at the, like who was 25 on my list 2 years ago or last year or 3 years ago or whatever. And how did I feel about that player? How have things shaken out ever since? And I think with this year's draft, a couple of things are true. I think the first two tiers are really good. Like, I think this year you're in a good year if you want a defenseman. You're in a good year if you want some flash, some razzle dazzle, some of that superstar upside. It's a good year for that. There are just a lot of really rock solid players in that top 10. Beyond that, there's a lot of fun skill. There are some players that I think definitely could project really, really well if things go well. But beyond that, from tier 4, starting with Casey Neutron, probably going all the way down to, like the mid 40s, are really interesting players that I think could fit a role. If I were building an NHL team, I could at least easily look at those players and identify them and go, I know exactly what this player could do in the NHL one day if things go well, right? It's pretty easy to identify. Beyond that, tier 6, tier 7, down to the watch list, a lot of it is like, I want it to work. It would be awesome if these guys worked out, but I just don't know if it will, right? Anderberg, Command, Galvis, Hurlbert, Adam Nemec, just a lot of really fun, really interesting players to watch, but I just don't know if it'll be enough for the NHL. There are also some guys in here where if you just want a player, I feel like you might get something out of them. Maddox Dagenet is definitely one. I could see him going in the first round and being a decent pick there. I feel like his game is a little bit limited, and it'll be interesting to see what happens to him over the next few years. Ben Macbeth is another one where I don't know about his ceiling, but there's a really good floor of just sort of boring but effective defenseman there. It's just going to be a matter of if it'll work in the NHL. But there's a whole bunch of these guys in this range that I'd love to see it work, but I have some level of doubt, especially once you get past guys like Scherer and Ala Lowry. There's just doubts there with those guys, but it's still, I think, every name on my list with a number next to it are guys that I would be in some way excited to draft, right? There's something about them that makes them intriguing enough for me to pull the trigger on them, right? Even down as far as like, Axel Brongel Larson or JC Lemieux. JC Lemieux I'm looking at now, maybe I should even have him higher, but I feel like he plays a very high risk projection style of game. but he's a player that I've really, really liked. So this is a draft where it's like, if you're drafting in the top 2, I mean, I'd get on the phone and go, what would you offer me? And I mean, I think you could do a lot of damage if you lose the lottery, but you have a lot of draft picks in the top 100. Yeah, you could do a lot of damage. This is a good year to have a lot of draft picks, scattershot what you've got, scattershot what you're looking for, and try to get a little bit of a whole bunch of different type of player, because I think there's a lot out there to poke at. And I really, really like this class. It's been fun to watch them so far this year. I don't know if it's like they're going to be like this historically good draft class that everybody looks back on and goes, wow. But if guys hit their ceiling, it could be a really good one. And for a lot of guys, even if they don't, it's still probably going to turn out to be pretty good, because I think there are a lot of guys that someday, somewhere, some job, somewhere, they'll find a way to make a living in the NHL, right? So let's go back home here. So yeah, those are the rankings. Again, if you have any questions, I'll catch up on the ones that have already been asked as I untangle my headphone cable here. I've rolled over it in my chair here. And now I have unplugged my headphones. My safe space headphones. Okay, yeah, but if you have any questions, definitely fire them away. I'm ready and willing. I am able. I am capable. I don't know what I'm doing. I need more beverage. I'm sorry to break the hearts of people who wanted players in a certain range. It means I personally have a distaste for you, and I target you constantly, and it's definitely personal. It's definitely personal and targeted, especially if you pay me money every month to fund my work, which I appreciate very much. But you're a target automatically. So I apologize, but I apologize to absolutely nobody. I'm kidding. Thoughts on Rowan Henderson? That's a name I've heard a lot. And I'm not going to lie, I haven't seen much of him. So I'm going to do it. I'm going to do that. He's a Sudbury Wolf. Yeah. Yeah, I haven't seen too much of him. So I'll take a look. I always do. It's too bad though. He's 5'10", so. I mean, if he's like a Kevin He swing, then I'm all for it. I would love a Kevin He. We all love Kevin He in here. And if he's Kevin He, it's a little unusual. He's an 07, half a point a game, but Sudbury was not particularly amazing this year. I'll check him out. Thoughts on Rick Dhaliwal reporting the Canucks could take Malhotra at 3. Well, I mean, I could also win the lottery, It's a very convenient way to say a thing. Look, he's the media guy, right? Think about what the job is of the media. The media is there to make you look at them, make you pay attention. And it's been very, very well reported. I mean, it's obvious. Manny Malhotra is in the organization. The kid's dad is in the organization. They're going to get a chance at picking him, right? Four Canucks staff were at a game watching him play in the playoffs the other day. It's very convenient to say that that's what is in the cards. And, I'm sure that someone told him that he is part of the conversation, right? The phrasing is very deliberate, right? Someone could have just gone, yeah, we like him. We could take him there. And that's a great story to run with. Canucks person tells me that Caleb Malhotra is in their sights. Okay. That could change in a week. You would be, I mean, I don't know. Maybe you wouldn't be. I don't know you personally. But in my experience, you would be shocked at how much things can change between now and the end of the year. Shocked. It is far beyond, we are nowhere close to the end of the line here. I know a lot of teams around this time of the year are really seriously filing down their lists and all of that stuff because guys are stopping their games for the rest of the year. You don't want to get too biased in the wrong direction or something. And I get that. But yeah, things shift all the time. Things shift constantly. But look, I mean, look, the formula is there, right? Especially because he's on a super team. He's playing teams that are just nowhere close to Brantford's abilities. Look, I've seen a few games of his from the playoffs this year, and he's, the games I've seen, he's playing with Banach and Cooper Dennis, and those are the guys that are doing a lot of the scoring with him, right? He's obviously scored some goals, he's scored some points. Obviously, I'm not saying that's not happened, but when I watch him play, that's a great unit to have out there on the ice. I mean, Adam Banach has been outstanding this year for Brantford. And I just am spooked. I might, this is going to be the gamble that I'm making that I might regret in 5 years, but I am spooked by the Canadian Hockey League, man. I just see the way these guys are scoring. I see the way other teams are playing. I see the difference between the best teams and the worst teams. And it's just, I haven't done the math, but it just feels more staggering and wide than in prior years. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm a hater. Maybe I'm whatever. But it just doesn't sit right with me. And I just don't know. I think it's a risky play. In especially in like a guy like Malhotra's case. But again, it's not like I don't like him, right? Like it's like Dayton Waye last year, where it's like, you want to take him top 5, by all means, go nuts. Brady Martin top 5, by all means, go nuts. But I see them as more of guys in the teens, right? Good third line center, somewhere in the teens, at maybe back half of the top 10. But in this year's class, with all the great defensemen and the high end centers like Bjork and Lawrence, it just pushes Malhotra down for me. I've seen so much of him. If he goes at 3, then he goes at 3, and if it works out, then fantastic. But I haven't been able to get on board. No matter how hard I try, no matter how many times I look, no matter how much people tell me to go look again, I just haven't seen it. I don't understand the hype around Reed and Carroll's. Reed is a parking cone in the D zone, and Carroll's is a fine second pair defenseman. I agree. On Carroll's especially, I agree. I think with Reed, I agree with that sentiment defensively for him. But I think that with him, the skating and the puck rushing and the way he protects the puck and the pace at which he generates offense gives me a lot more confidence in his projection there than Carson Carroll's. Carroll's is a smart, capable defensive player. He, I think, is one of the more intelligent physical defensemen out there. He doesn't seem to overcommit too much. It's good anticipation. He has a good ability to read the game. But I think about those things. It's like I zoom out. I zoom out and I kind of go, okay, overall though, what's the total package here? And with Carroll's, it's the off puck stuff that I like, especially in his own end. But everything else to me is a huge mixed bag, right? Like I don't believe that his offense is projectable. Personally, I think it's very volume oriented. It's very sort of boiled down, like get the puck up the half wall, throw it out in front of the net. Get the puck down the half wall, throw it out in front of the net. Give the puck down the half wall, throw it in front of the net. Maybe you get down to the goal line, throw it in front of the net. He has that confidence, which is fine, but I just don't know how repeatable that is. There's not a whole lot of like dynamic ability in the offensive zone for me with Carroll's. With Reed, I think there is more. But look, I mean, people have Reed top 5, right? I've got him top 10. If he's gone before, I mean, it's a no-brainer to me that I would take other guys in that tier higher than him. But if you really believe in that skating ability and that he'll get stronger and all that stuff, then sure, I guess you could do it. But it would be a really tough sell for me to take him over guys like Lawrence and Bjork and even Villeneuve. Like, I think Villeneuve is, like saying it out loud now, I'm kind of wishing I had Reed a tier lower. But yeah, no, I see a lot of really impressive defensemen in that group anyway. Carroll's, yeah, I agree. I think he's more of a, it's more of a back end of the first round. But I think you'll get a player out of him. I just don't think it's going to be this like whatever it is people think he's going to be. I just don't see that. As a Canucks fan, I worry for what they're going to do if they don't get a top 2 pick. I think there's great talent at the top of the class. They'll find a way to ignore. Look, you got to hope, right? If you're a fan, if you're a fan of a team, you got to hope that they're going to do well by you. You know what I mean? I know people with Vancouver. I think that they're at least trying to move in the right direction. This is not an organization on the scouting level or anything that is completely clueless. So I think with the Canucks, it's a matter of like, I mean, if I'm Patrick Alvin and it's third overall, I'm picking up the phone and seeing what people want to offer me. If Ivar Stenberg is available at 3 or something, it might be a tough sell for me to give up that pick, but I think you could do it. I think you could do it. I just think that there are so many guys in this draft that are being overlooked and over concerned about, and dropped significantly more than they should be, that if you drop down and add a few picks in that first round, early second round, you could do a lot of damage. And I think this top end of the class is a lot closer than people make it seem. They're gonna take Noah Juleson. Yeah. Who's the Noah Juleson of this draft? I mean, it might be Carson Carroll's, man. I don't like, Noah Juleson has had a career, and without injuries, who knows where he could have been. But Juleson was a very productive junior player who ended up more of a physical defense-first defenseman in the NHL, and I could see that being the case with Carroll's. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong, but I haven't seen it with him, honestly. Thoughts on Hage going back to Michigan? I mean, I get it. He's going to play with his brother. I'm sure that matters a lot, especially because of the family dynamics at play. It's a personal decision. You know what I mean? Like, he's a kid. He's a person. He has every right to do what he thinks is best for his life. He's still going to have a long career in the NHL. Michigan, I don't know if you watched that game where Michigan lost to Denver. Johnny Hicks stole their souls out of their bodies and made them watch as he stomped on it. He piled all of their souls together into a big pile at center ice, and he just started stomping on them. Like, the Michigan Wolverines this year had their lives ripped out of them by Denver this year. That game, I couldn't believe that it went to overtime. I couldn't believe that Johnny Hicks stayed after getting basically knocked out earlier in the game. It was such an amazing game. If I'm Michael Hage, I'm coming off the ice after that game going like, I can't end it like that, right? If he likes it in Michigan, which he obviously does, and his brother's on the way, he's probably sitting there going like, I want to do that again, and I want to win next time. I don't want to do that again. I don't want to leave on that note. I'll forego my paycheck, right? If you're a Habs fan, I don't think you should be concerned whatsoever, right? I just think this is a matter of like, he's not done yet in college. Like, I think that it's like, is he going to be a top 6 player for Montreal next year? Maybe. But Montreal doesn't necessarily like need him. They're the best team in the conference. So for him to go back, it's he definitely could make the jump, but I totally understand it from an emotional standpoint that like, yeah, that shouldn't be how it ends. That shouldn't be how it ends. My brother's coming to town. I like it here. I want to come back and do this again. And for all of us nerds, he could go to the World Juniors next year. He very well could. He could be. Wait, could he? Yeah, he could go to the World Juniors next year, right? No, he couldn't. He's done. Never mind. Forget I said that. Never mind. Before you say it, I know. I forget it. But I like it. I like it. Good for him. The Flames, I could see picking Bjork as well. If the Hawks drafted Reed, I'd be furious. I mean, it depends where Chicago's drafting, but yeah, I wouldn't draft Reed in the top 5 personally. But I'm also like, I'm also coming from the perspective of like Reed, I'm also coming from the perspective like I have Lawrence that high. I've got Bjork that high, right? Are those guys realistically going to go ahead of Reed? No, I don't think so. Not realistically. Maybe, but I don't know. But yeah, I'd look elsewhere. Has someone got multiplayer to work on the draft sim yet? So I was working on this over the weekend, actually. it's you can, I believe, you can test this out for me. It's still not done, but I believe you can do anything except trade with the CPU. You can trade amongst, actually, trading itself is still kind of broken. The trade engine is still kind of broken, but you can do it. Like, if you go in, you can make a lobby, your friends can join with an invite code, and you can make it work. I was doing it over the weekend with myself. It might be buggy though. Like, the trade engine, I think, is still a work in progress. For some reason, I can't get the scripts to work with the CPUs and notifications between users remotely. It's tricky. I've never done anything like this before, so it is tricky. But I believe that if you and your friends join a lobby and start a draft together and just make draft picks and just let it run, it should work. So if you want to try it and let me know, by all means. I was doing it on the weekend and it worked for me. But if you do anything like trading or something like that, I don't think it works properly. And I don't think you can. But what you can do is you can, when it is time to pick, you can make a pick or you can make a trade with the computer. You can offer your pick to the computer and it'll give you the offers like it does in the single player. And then you can go from there. So basically everything but the inter-user trade engine and trading with the CPU when it isn't your pick, those are tricky spots. Those are really, really tricky spots. Or I guess you can only trade when it is your pick because you get what I'm saying. But yeah. It's cool that Potter's transferring. Yeah, I mean, look, I am not a personal fan of what is obviously happening here in the NCAA, where there is a lot of championship chasing going on. Look, it's Cullen Potter's choice, obviously. ASU gave him a hell of an opportunity to be the guy, and he was the guy, right? Michigan State is a wagon of a hockey team, and he'll be great. He'll do great there. I have no doubt about it. It's just unfortunate because I like to see a little bit more like I just like to see more diversity in terms of like who's playing where. Obviously, that's just me and my preference. If Cullen Potter goes, I would much rather play for Michigan State than ASU. No offense. I'd go, okay, fair enough. Enjoy yourself. I hope it's worthwhile, but I just have to hope that over time, more teams become places that players really want to go and stay at the high level of the game. But I'm sure Michigan State fans don't mind because he'll be quite good there. Do you see Lawrence or Bjork being better if both hit? Well, they're next door to each other in the draft, and I feel like at the end of the day they could play similar roles. I have less concerns about Lawrence's skating than I do about Bjork's, or at least his escape speed, his ability to escape pressure, work through pressure, all those things. But Bjork is a very smart player. He is a just a much better, like he grinds himself to the net a lot more than Lawrence does off the puck. Gets a little bit better scoring chances than Lawrence does, but yeah, I have Lawrence edging him out ever so slightly. I go back and forth on them all the time. Isn't Villeneuve the oldest player in the draft? No. The oldest player in the draft is, at least in my tracker that actually functions, Kalle Kratz of Vekwa Lakers is the oldest guy. Petr Vesterheim, maybe, as well. Magomed Sharakhanov. Those are the types of guys that are the oldest in the draft. I know that's not your point, but it's still funny to me. What's the difference between Carroll's and Hensler in this draft? Honestly, I think I like Hensler more. Hensler's offensive ability, I think, is more projectable. I think he gets around the ice. He's more of a fluid skater than Carroll's is. I think he's a more reliable passer, but Hensler did not have the defensive ability. Hensler did not have the defensive abilities that I think Carroll's kind of does in the defensive zone. He's not necessarily bad there, but in terms of physical play and juggling stick checks and positioning and physical play, Hensler was a little bit of a step behind, but I personally would go Hensler ahead of Carroll's right now. When did Verhoff stop playing goalie? I believe that was like 2021 or 2020, something like that. I think someone replied. Yeah, 2021, something like that. College hockey seems to be doing what college baseball is turning into, which is the third ranked league in North America. Yeah, I mean, look, the NCAA. I saw quite a bit of NCAA hockey this year. It's the place to be. I said this last week on the show, but like, if I'm an agent, if I'm a player agent or an advisor, whatever you want to call it, I'm going like, go to college as soon as possible, man. Like, if you're an elite level hockey player, if you are truly thinking that you are one of the best in the world for your age, test yourself in college. That's where you'll get the reality check of the next step for you. If you don't feel like you're ready, and you don't feel like, if you're watching NCAA games and going, I don't know about that, and you go to the CHL, fair enough. I totally get it. That would totally not be a bad choice. But I'm always definitely looking at college as a great option nowadays. It's an amazing level of hockey now. You're getting, like, that Frozen Four was astoundingly good, and even the playoffs to get in were really, really, really good from what I saw. They're great teams. Those high-end programs, they're just loaded with really, really talented players. So, yeah, lots to like. Thoughts on Max Plante winning the Hobey Baker? Probably the right call. I thought a guy like Polkamp would have gotten a really good look. But I've liked Plante this year when I've checked in on him. Really smart, aggressive player on both sides of the puck. We'll see what happens to him down the road in the NHL or AHL or whatever it is. But I think it was a fair choice. The other ones, who were the other ones? It was TJ Hughes and someone else. And yeah, I probably would have gone Plante. Made this point about prospect on NCAA. Lots of draft guys in this space are missing, and I'm with you. Well, I'm glad someone agrees with me. I think the gap between the NCAA and the CHL has widened exceptionally. And honestly, like, I think the USHL is floating under the radar too. I think people are underrating how good that league is too. It's very much a college prep league. There's no dilly-dallying there either. So I think the paradigm is changing. What are your thoughts on Bilecki? I think he's okay. I haven't seen enough of him to like be absolutely certain. I should probably track him before I write him off, but just one of these guys where it's like he hasn't, like, I look at the bottom names on my list of defensemen, and you know, like, I watch guys like Ta'amu and Keane and Braden Thompson and Ola Palme, and with Bilecki, I just don't know if he's there. Could the development could really help him. I just don't know about like the skating ability projecting. He's got a bit of skill, which is nice. He's got some room on his body to fill out for sure. We'll see. I don't know. My thoughts on him are pretty limited. Are there two players you watch and were like, if these two were the same player, they'd be the best player in the draft? That's a great question. Probably Gavin McKenna and Ivar Stenberg. Maybe Keaton Verhoff and Xavier Villeneuve, something like that, if you want a defenseman, or Villeneuve and Gustafsson. Lawrence and no, not that. Yeah, something like that. Belchetz is very Flyers coded, potentially. I mean, they did draft a Windsor Spitfire last year in the top 12. Thoughts on Lawrence in the latter half of the BU season? I thought he should have stayed in Muskegon after he had a slip in the beginning of BU, as he was, I mean, I thought he was fantastic. Jay Pandolfo is his coach with BU, and he had a lot of nice things to say about Tynan Lawrence down the stretch, man. He had a lot of nice things to say about Lawrence down the stretch, and I believe him. He's a huge team player. He's a huge team guy. A guy who I really liked what he brought to the table. I mean, look, the way I see it is, if you're going to write a player off at 17 years old, not saying you're doing this, but I'm seeing it. If you're going to write a player off at 17 years old because of how they play in the NCAA, but if they had stayed with Muskegon and scored at that pace for the entire season and they're in your top three, then you have to keep them in your top three, right? Because, like, he's getting an experience that, if you genuinely believe that what he does in the USHL is really his true abilities, but then he goes to the NCAA and you change your mind all of a sudden, like, I just don't believe that that's I just think that you have to think about that a little bit more. I do think he got a lot better down the stretch of the year. I don't even think he was that bad in his first few games, honestly. I watched a bunch of them, and for a guy just starting in the NCAA after 13 games in the USHL, missing a chunk of the season with an injury, yeah, no. And he's going to be at the under 18s. I don't know. If it's anything like the Holinka tournament this year, him and Preston are going to run the table again, which they did. What about Gashelov or Cecil you have at center? I don't really like either of those guys. I just don't. I don't see NHL players there, honestly. They'll probably get drafted, but I don't see it. If Chicago falls to 4, grab Bjork, yeah, for sure. Ehlers got 79. Ehlers got 70 points. Wow, imagine that. What's the beverage of the day? I explained. Are the Protas brothers a good ceiling comp for Belchitz? I mean, kinda. I guess they're kind of up that alley. Someone asked about Daniil Prokhorov as well. I could see that. I think Prokhorov. It's an interesting comparison that I'm now going over in my head. I think Belchitz, there's a bit more physicality in his game than Prokhorov had, but and I think there's a little bit more of a playmaker's instinct. Prokhorov was more of like a brute force size and skill combination, just kind of barreling up the ice and trying to dangle the pants off of everyone. I think with Belchitz, there's a little bit more refinement in his game. But Prokhorov's a good player too. He's good. I haven't seen a ton of him though this year. Grav is here. Hello, sir, or was here. No offense, but Malhotra is an absolute joke. No offense, but you're kind of an idiot. Why? I would love for you to explain to me why. Explain in detail with your experience watching him play hockey, why that's the case. Yeah, I mean, look, with Malhotra, again, you have to look beyond just the fact that he has a lot of points this year. I have so much I'll show you. You know what? I'm going to show you. What's his name? Malhotra. There. Oh, nope, wrong button. There it is. Yeah. There it is. Malhotra. There are things in his game that are good, it's undeniable there are things in his game that are good, but there's also a lot that you wouldn't expect to be as much of a work in progress as it is, right? I can't highlight on the screen here, but his defensive numbers by and large are not great. He does get involved in defensive cycles pretty well. He doesn't waste his shot attempts, which is also good, but he's not generating a tremendous amount of offense at 5-on-5 overall. He's not generating a whole lot of offense at 5-on-5 in my experience, and when he does, a lot of it is off the backs of the guys that he's playing with. I think that overall, and he's also losing the possession battle. I do a lot of work tracking games against guys, against teams that are actually good, and in the OHL, I just think that watching Malhotra pound the crap out of the North Bay Battalion, who are just not the Brantford Bulldogs, it's a risky place to put yourself. And I understand it's against the norms, but I felt the exact same way about a Caleb Desnoyers last year. Same thing with Brady Martin. People adored these guys. They were right in your backyard. You see them all the time because they're in the Ontario Hockey League, and everybody talks about them. They got a magnifying glass on them all the time. They got the bloodlines, all that stuff. Right. Fair enough. Right. But I just see a guy where it's I think he's one of the 20 to 25 best players in the world for his age instead of 3, right? I don't know. I watch a lot of them, and I watch a lot of other players too, man. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But I think there's some questions there. But maybe you're right. Maybe it is just rage bait. Which guys do you think the Carolina will be high on in the second and third rounds? Yeah, Rubrek for sure. Let's see. Who was good when they were 16, but maybe is going to be available in the middle of the draft? Dagenet, perhaps. Bowie, perhaps later on. I don't know, man. That defenseman in Muskegon, Daniel, he's big and he can skate, so maybe there's something there for them. Hmm. I don't know. I'm just looking up and down my list here. Jonas Wu. Maybe they take Jonas Wu in the end of the draft. I don't know. I don't know. Other draft reports I've seen Villeneuve much lower. What are the knocks against him and others see more critically? I mean, number one, I think people think he's small. I think that's part of it. I think they just see an offensive defenseman and think he's small when he's not. I think he's 5'11 and pretty well built for a 5'11 kid. I think people also like there are issues with this game, right? Villeneuve is a very good example of how I think about the game and how other people think about the game and how different that difference can be. Like I always think about it from the like I zoom out. I kind of go whoop and look at the whole picture from the defensive end of the puck to the offensive end and go, okay, when all is said and done, what is the output? If a player has a bad giveaway in the defensive end, but they score 5 primary assists and absolutely dominate with the puck on their stick, do you care that much about the giveaway? Like, would you rather sacrifice all of that offense and say, well, at least the guy I have doesn't give away the puck, right? Because I feel like Villeneuve is a very good example of that. At times, he can be frustrating. He's definitely a guy who's not the strongest guy in the universe. I think people see guys get through him with pressure and energy, and I think they to a point, I'd say rightfully, also get spooked by that. And with Villeneuve, I just look at how he skates, the skill level, the creativity, just the sheer audacity of his style of play is so entertaining and so impressive. And it's been so impressive in multiple different times when I've seen him that I just kind of go, yeah, I want this guy, especially if he's going like 20th. You know what I mean? It's the exact same story as so many other guys who just you kind of look back and you go, how did this guy go here in the draft? How did that happen? You know, I haven't seen a guy like him in a long time. And in terms of the numbers that he puts up, I haven't seen a guy like him on defense. I don't know. I think since Scott Morrow, and he was doing the same kind of things in prep school. Now, Scott Morrow hasn't turned out as people expected, but Morrow at prep school put up numbers like Villeneuve does in the Q. And he does so in ways that I think will project. Like the skating, the skill level, the aggressiveness, the way he attacks the middle of the ice. That's exactly what I'm looking for in a defenseman that can play offensively. Do you need to build a bit of a system around him? Do you need to surround him with the right group of guys? Perhaps, yeah, I guess. But I think with the positives very, very heavily outweigh the negatives. And I think people are very focused on the negatives and very scared of an offensive defenseman that won't project to the NHL. But in reality, a lot of offensive defensemen that people are rating very highly in this draft, I don't think project super cleanly to the NHL as an offensive defenseman. At least when you look at how the best offensive defensemen in the NHL nowadays play, I see a lot more in Villeneuve than I do in those other guys. What are your thoughts on Alexander Bilecki and Måns Gudmundsson? Could you see Bilecki as a first-round pick? I answered Bilecki a little bit earlier. Gudmundsson, I don't know. I watched him the other day, and, you know, like, he's going to get drafted. He's big. He's lanky. He skates okay. If you can do that, the NHL will pick you. I think he's a decent player. I think he plays enough of a safe style of play that he could get to the NHL if he gets stronger and, you know, but the defensive game for him, if you're going to draft him as a defensive defenseman, he's certainly not the best defensive defenseman that I've ever seen this year. You're kind of hoping that that's what he becomes. And I don't know how much offense you're going to get out of him. I don't know. He's just kind of dropped off the planet for me a little bit. Bilecki, I'll put him on the list and add him to the track list for between now and the end of the year. Who are your top goalies in the draft? My top goalies, I mean, I don't do a whole lot of goalie work. But the guys that stick out the most for me have been like Yegor Rybkin in Nizhny Novgorod, Tobias Trebel in Youngstown, William Lassell with Blainville, Boisbriand, Ryder Fedorov in Ottawa. I'm just looking at my list now. Dmitry Borachev in Yaroslavl, Xavier Wendt. All those guys are really intriguing goaltenders. It's a pretty good year for goaltenders, I think. Beyond that, I mean, even Bottinger, Sklenichka, Noling, Netzcash, even I really still like Netzcash. There's some stuff to like there. Gleb Peshkov is a hoot. If you want to watch a fun goaltender, you go watch Gleb Peshkov. But yeah, Rybkin's the guy that I also really have enjoyed watching. He's really big, he's athletic, and tracks play really well, and there's a lot to like with a guy like Rybkin. What do you like and not like about Tomas Horenko? Okay. He's interesting. I mean, he's a pretty smart playmaker. He's got some good skill. He gets around the ice okay. With Horenko, it's really tricky because it's like he's in that group, I think, if I look at my list. Yeah, he's in that group of players where it's like, I want it to work. I just don't know what his job is going to be. Like, he's not quite skilled enough to be like a top 6 center. He's not quite physical or good enough off the puck to be a top 6 center, a top 9 center. He's not quite the most physical guy in the world, so he can't be like that energetic bottom 6 guy. He's not the best in terms of skating and getting around the ice. I just don't know if I buy that as his upside. It's like, what's he going to do? And I don't know the answer to that. So there's not a whole lot I can point at in his game that I go, like, I don't like this about him. But like, is there going to be enough? And it's the same with Nemec, right? With Adam Nemec. It's like, I don't know what he's going to be. You know what I mean? And that makes it really tough because I don't like drafting guys like that where you go, they're all right, but I don't know what their job is going to be, you know? But if they're around in the middle rounds, then yeah, the talent is really good with these guys, and they're pretty smart. They make good reads, and they're decent players. What are your thoughts on Potter's transfer to Michigan State? Yeah, I kind of answered this before, but like, he's fine. I mean, it's. I would have really liked to see him help ASU out of the dumpster. You know, they had a pretty bad year, and just when he was getting hot, he got hurt. And jumping ship and going to Michigan State, like, I get it. You're joining a super team. You're going to compete for a national championship. You're going for it. Fair enough, you know. Can't complain. It's going to make Michigan State better. He's going to score. If it makes me look smart, I agree with it. But I don't know. I like seeing guys go to different schools and stretch out a little bit and give themselves an opportunity. You know, is Cullen Potter going to play 20 minutes a night for Michigan State? Maybe. I don't know. But I don't think there's a certainty on it. But with ASU, they're playing them all night, man. Constantly. I'd rather Tempe weather than Lansing. I agree. I would much rather Tempe than Lansing. You can also obviously recommend players to me, of course. I'm all ears, man. 3/4 of my job is listening to your suggestions and then pretending that I found these players and that I do all the hard work and that I'm not stealing all of your ideas. That's how this works, you know? That's a joke. But yeah, of course, if you have anyone, yeah, I'll take a look. Eventually. Can't say it'll happen tonight, but eventually. Could you see Utah drafting Ryan Lynn? He doesn't seem their type, but I like him. Is there any D that are offensive that you could see them liking more? Ooh, I don't know about that. It doesn't scratch the itch for me for them. I think if you want an offensive defenseman that's more up Utah's alley. Excuse me. I mean, maybe like a Luke Scherer later in the draft could be a guy that kind of scratches that itch for them. He's big and he's a pretty good playmaker. Samuel Lowry is another one that might be like that. Noah Ta'amu, I think, could be a good Utah pick for them based on what they like. Even an Axel Brunkel Larson. I don't know if I think he's like an offensive defenseman, but he does have some tools and there might be something there. But I always look at Utah and I go, especially in the first few rounds of the draft, they go big, right? They don't generally draft guys that lack size. So yeah, I don't know about Lin. I would not be surprised to see Lin slip in the draft more than people expect, just because of the issues in his game. But you know, he's a really smart player. There's a lot to like. So there's that. Bjork NHL comp? It's a good question. There are not many guys like him in the NHL, to be honest. I was talking to Mikhail Holm the other day, our resident our resident Swede on staff, and he keeps, I don't know if he's serious about this, but he keeps calling him the Swedish Sidney Crosby. I don't know if I believe that, but the Leafs are winning a game. Good. Whatever. Good for them. Let's see. Does this login still work? I need my EP premium account here. All right, there we go. What are we doing? We're looking at NHL. Craig Janney. That's a pull, man. You're of my generation, I think. You might even be older than me. Craig Janney is a throwback and a half, man. Good call. All right. So, I mean, I don't think Bjork is done growing, to be very clear. So claiming him being 5'9" forever, I think is unlikely, just based on his game or based on his family and projection. But who does he remind me of? It's hard, man. I don't know. Oh, nope. That's not what I wanted. I wanted max height of 5'10". Let's say 5'10". Yeah, Bjork's brother is much taller, and I think his parents are tall. Yeah, there's not many of them, eh? Not a whole lot. I mean, he's got a bit of that Berkeley Catton to him. It's hard. There's not many guys like him in the NHL, but that's also like, I think, a selection bias where it's like if the NHL believes that guys like him can't work, then they're not going to play guys even if they would work and they would try. So it kind of creates a self-fulfilling prophecy, I think. You know, but I just look at how smart he is, how aggressive he is, how good of a forechecker he is, and I think there's a lot to like there. You know, I feel pretty good about projecting him as a center in the NHL. I don't know about Ben Kindle. I see where you're coming from. Like, it's kind of up a similar alley. But I think there's more jam in Bjork's game than Kindle for sure. You know, Bjork goes to the net. Bjork is a grinder at times. He's no slouch, man. He plays bigger than he is, and I like him a lot. Do you think prospects like Paul Fisher, Ryan Healy, or Red Savage will make their way to the NHL or long shots? Fisher, maybe, but none of those guys have ever struck me as like definite NHLers. I've always liked Ryan Healy. It'd be nice to see him in the NHL. He's a skilled, fun defenseman. But I don't see it right now. Did you see Quinn Beauchene is getting an ATO for Wilkes-Barre? I did not see that, but good for him. I mean, if he can stay away from the nonsense that ended his season, the silliness that he was pulling off, then great. But we like Quinn Beauchene here. He's a team scouting member. He's a good player, and hopefully that goes well for him. I feel really spooked by these offense-only defensemen. My sentiment is with those types is, why aren't you a forward or a center? You're that good. I mean, I see your point. I mean, again, I look at defensemen and always think about them from the defensive end out as a priority, right? Unless the offense is really, truly that spectacular. Like, look at all of the defensemen in the NHL that when you watch them play, you go, holy smokes, I wish we had that guy, right? Matthew Schaefer, Lane Hudson, Quinn Hughes, Cale Makar. Like, all of those defensemen are exciting to watch and offensive, but also can play decent defensive hockey as well. Lane Hudson has gotten a lot better in that regard this year anyway, right? Like, Rasmus Dahlin, He's good defensively as well, but he is a very offensive heavy defenseman, right? Erik Karlsson. Are you going to say no to an Erik Karlsson? Are you going to say no to these guys? I wouldn't. You know what I mean? And those guys have all had really great careers to this point. Can you win with them on their own? I don't think so. But you do need other stuff on the team to round things out. And I think though that those guys are like foundational pieces, and with a guy like Villeneuve, like when I look at the guys in this year's draft class, the defensemen, especially at the top end, like the true guys that I go, these guys are going to be offensive defensemen, period. It's like Villeneuve, Svensk, yeah. Like the rest are kind of, maybe Chase Reed, the rest are kind of like two-way presences, like neutral zone heavy or defensive zone heavy guys who, like Verhoff can make a play. Verhoff does have offensive tools, but I wouldn't call Verhoff like down the road like an offensive defenseman. I wouldn't call Albert Smits down the road like an offensive defenseman. Like a lot of these guys are kind of balanced in multiple facets of the game at both ends, which I really like to see. With Villeneuve, he is definitely an offensive defenseman, but he is really good at it. He's really good at it. Yep, Viking Gustafsson Nyberg made his debut tonight. I did see that. That's pretty fun. Lynn versus Villeneuve, what are the differences? Villeneuve is I would argue, much more gifted skater. Incredible skill level. Lynn's is fine, but it's not comparable to Villeneuve's. Villeneuve's deception and confidence in the offensive zone, like Lynn is a lot more offensive driven off of the blue line, but Villeneuve is just a monster, man. I would really urge you to go watch some Villeneuve if you haven't already. Like Lynn is very smart. Lynn sees the ice really well. There's lots of good tactics out of Lynn during a game, but I just don't know if it works at the higher levels. With Villeneuve, you just give him the puck, man. Let him go to work and let him learn and just enjoy the ride, man, because he's great. Yeah, a fellow Wyatt Cullen enjoyer. Yeah, you're amongst friends, my friend. Do you think Carroll's could be like Ryan McDonough? Perhaps. Yeah, something like that. Sure. Yeah. Like I've got Carroll's in my first round. I like his defensive his defensive ability. But I just don't think his role in the NHL is likely to be like super high production offensive defenseman. I just don't know if I see that. Can Lawrence be a 1C? I will say yes, because it would make me look really, really smart if he did. Look, if you think he's a 1C, then you're saying he's going to be one of the 30 best centers in the NHL or 32 best centers in the NHL. I not literally, but like thought experiment wise, the best center on each team, 32 number one centers, one of the 32 best centers in the league. Depends on what you like in a center. Depends on what you think, right? Depends on what you think a center should be. But on my team with Tynan Lawrence, if he's my second line center, I am really happy, because whoever's my first line center must be really good. Like, I think in a pinch, maybe Lawrence could play there, but I'm not going to put those expectations on him. I think I think you're getting a second line center there who drives play really effectively, makes everybody around him better, and maybe you have a first line center there, maybe, but I would be more than happy with him on my second line. Yegor Lazarev. All right. I'll look. I'll look. I also got to write down Bilecki so I don't forget. I watch a lot of classic hockey. I was watching Game 4 of the Stanley Cup Final between Philadelphia and Montreal in 1976 the other night. It was one of those things that I'm sure you can relate, but it's like, I should be in bed. But I'm going to click on this video that's 3 hours long, and what can you say? And then the night disappears, and the next day you're a miserable mess of a nightmare of a human being. But that was really fun, because watching the Habs in that era, yeah, they rock. They were really, really good. You go, it's so funny, like watching guys in that era, and you're like, yeah, I could see how Guy Lafleur would be one of the GOATs at that time. Yeah, I could see it all these guys just rocking. on the Montreal team, and then you look at how Philadelphia plays, and you're just like, okay, yeah, it was like the kind of end of one era of hockey and sort of the beginnings of another era of hockey in a way, like not 1-to-1, but like during that game, Philadelphia ended up in the box. Philadelphia ended up in the penalty box 30 seconds into the game because I forget his name. Was it Dave Schultz? Is that who it was? Went into the corner against a guy and punched him in the back of the neck. Like, right in front of the referee. Referee's arm just went straight up. He just went right in and punched him in the back. No hit, no nothing. Just bam. It's like, what are you doing? Like, but the commentators were like, well, that's how you set the tone in a game. And it's like, bro, they're down 3-0 in the series. Like, they're going down a man against the Montreal Canadiens down 3-0 in a series. Like, this is an awful thing to do right off the start of the game. Like, what are we doing? Yeah, I don't know. But it was funny. It was really funny. But I love watching classic hockey, man, especially in the summer. It's really, really good. Maybe we should do some scouting reports on vintage hockey tapes. See what I got a lot of things to say about Paul Coffey, man. You watch. What do you think of Michael Hage's decision to go to university? I mean, I talked about it earlier. I'm not going to hold it against him. I said this earlier, right? I'll put it this way. What just happened to him in Michigan? He had his soul ripped out of him and ripped in half and smashed on the ground in front of his face. I can understand why he might want to go back and finish the job and do better next year and win that game. Like, Michigan did just about everything to win, and Johnny Hicks went to them and said, how about no? And they lost. I don't know. I don't think there's any rush for him to go to the NHL. Like, Montreal would probably be better with him, but like, they're the best team in the East already, at least on paper. So, obviously for Habs fans, it sucks you have to wait a year, but you'll be fine. He'll be fine. You'll be fine. He's coming to town eventually, and it's going to be fun. But yeah. Oh, Philadelphia clinched a playoff spot. There you go. Stress watching the Leafs. Who, how, why stress? Why stress when watch Leaf? Leaf cause no stress. Leafs no stress themselves, so why you stress? Oh boy. Very important question. Would a cast iron juicer be a good Christmas or birthday gift? I have had a cast iron juicer in my Amazon wish list for 18 months. If you gave me one, I'd be really happy. It would, look, I live with one person. There's only two of us. We have no kids. I live under a roof with one person, but I really, really wish I could go to Costco and buy those giant sacks of apples or a sack of pomegranates or, whatever, and do something with it before they all go bad. You know what I mean? And if I had a juicer, it's just like one of those extra purchases, and we don't really have the counter space, to be honest, but like, it's just one of those things where it's like, I making your own apple juice or your own orange juice or your own pomegranate juice. Oh yeah. No. Yes, please sign me up. But not today. Unfortunately, not today. I would take it. Who in this class is shooting the best game at the Masters or whatever the terms are in golf? Well, it'll be whoever Toronto drafts. So there's that. They're going to be golfing a lot, so they're going to get plenty of practice. Can't wait for the Instagram posts in mid-April on a golf course in Hawaii or something, going hanging out with the boys, shooting around a golf. Glad to be here. And all the comments come in like, oh, here we go. So whoever the Leafs pick is probably the right answer. With the Flames having Parekh already, would steer them away from drafting another offensive defenseman like Villeneuve. I really like the player, and if we did have Parekh, I'd want him bad. Thoughts? I see what you mean. Look, you've got Parekh. If you believe that Villeneuve is the best player available, then you take him. Personally, I look at Tynan Lawrence and I go, that is perfect Calgary Flames fodder, especially considering who they've drafted in recent years. Like, the idea of him sharing the ice with Matt Vagradine or Ethan Wittenbach, for example, or whatever, yeah, you'd be okay. I think things would be fine. I personally also have a little bit of hesitation about Parekh, but he'll get there, I think. I think I would look elsewhere with him, with Villeneuve, unless all 5 of my top guys are off the board. I think Schmitz would be a great Calgary Flame. A lot of guys. There's lots of guys. Yeah, Lawrence could be a Sebastian Aho type guy, first, second line. Yeah, I'd like that. But again, look, you can speculate however you want, but if it's you're only allowed to do it if it makes me look smart. As long as you stroke my ego and you don't play on my deep insecurities about acceptance and self-esteem, we're good. Just keep it going. You know what I mean? Like, just keep the flow coming, you know, of all of this stuff, right? That's what we're here for, you know? So if you think he's going to be Sidney Crosby, let me have it. If you think he's the worst hockey player in the world, you keep it to yourself, or I ban you. I mute you and ban you forever, because that's just how I am. No, I'm kidding. I would never do that. I actually think I've only ever banned a person one time. I think. But I'm pretty sure it was a spam account. Pretty sure. Yeah, Lawrence and Reshny as your centers would not be awful. I would be pretty happy about that. You got your mom a juicer and she didn't like it. I'll take it. I'll give you 30 cents on the dollar and you can ship it to me. I won't reimburse you for the shipping. That's my final offer. How about that? Would you ever consider bumping guys up within a tier in your rankings because of their expected next teams in development, especially with the new NCAA CHL hybrid path? Something like Lynn going to DU make him more valuable, or Xavier Villeneuve to BU? Yeah, kinda. Honestly, that's a really, really great point. That's a great point. And that's something that I always try to think about, because I watch these guys a lot, right? I watch these guys a lot, and I always try to put myself in the shoes of I try to put myself in the shoes of like their advisor, right? If I'm watching a guy like Villeneuve, and he all of a sudden is like, I'm going to Lindenwood University or like Maine, I'm going, I kind of see where you're coming from, but like, there aren't a whole lot of players like you that have come out of that place, you know, and gone on to do stuff. But when you see a guy like Ryan Lynn go to Denver, you go, oh yeah, you know, I see where they're coming from on that, or I see what the sale was on that. Or you look at yeah, like you mentioned, Xavier Villeneuve, like they just lost Cole Hudson. They've had all kinds of really fun defensemen over the years. And bing bang boom, I could very easily see that work. A guy like that there. So that does factor into the equation for sure. You know, like I look at a Jack Hextall going to Michigan State, for example, and I kind of go like, man, really? Like, I see you hitting the transfer portal after a year, man. Like, you're not going to play very much, and like, I'm sure there are other schools that would line up to play you as their top 6 center tomorrow. So like, if that's what you really want, that's what you really want. But I don't know, man. But it's a good point. It's a great point. It's a factor. It's not something I always am consciously thinking about, especially because there are large parts of the year where you don't know the answer to that question. But it does matter. It does matter. Anyone who comes out of Maine is going to be Paul Correa. The Bradley Nadeau erasure is unfathomable. Would you give Johnny Hicks a shot at the NHL level? Bruh, I would be on the phone yesterday. Well, I'd be on the phone the night that game ended with his agent or whatever and be like, look, I've had my eye on Hicks. I said this in a tweet, but he was on my watch list in 2023 when he was first eligible. I think was it 2000? Yeah, 2023. I just loved him when I watched him then in the BCHL. I don't know much about goaltending, and he was small, and that's always a factor. But like you look at the track record that he's had and the history in his career, it's just unbelievable. And like, what more could you want? The NCAA is the best it's ever been, and he went in there and crushed the life energy out of multiple really good teams that were trying to crush his life energy, right? Like, I don't know. I get it that he's short. He's 5'10" or whatever. I would have been on the phone with him, bringing him to camp as much as I could to make a relationship there. I don't know if I would have drafted him, but I would definitely be like, hey, we want to bring you here eventually, and like just multi-year project, like keep that relationship going. And then when he's ready, I want to be the first team he calls, right? Like that's where I want to be, you know, and I am awesome. I am amazed at what he's been capable of with Denver. It's not easy. His analytics this year with that team are really good. Yeah, I mean, I'd be giving him a phone call. I don't know. I mean, he's only played like 17 NCAA games, right? Or 18 of them. So maybe he's not ready yet. I wouldn't blame him. But I'd be picking up the phone and being like, "Hey, bro, let me take you out for Nobu or something. Let's chat, man, because a lot of teams might write you off because you're 5'10", but I want to be the first team that calls you, or you call when you're ready to come to the NHL." Leafs had an own goal happen. Sick. Go Leafs, go. Who would have thought the Flyers would have been a playoff team? Yeah, not really. Not me. Are you usually good at the NHL bracket challenge? No. Is anybody? No, I'm not. I will do one though. I don't think the NHL playoffs are set, but when did the playoffs start? The start of the playoffs is April 13th. Wait, what? Oh no, 18th. Thursday afternoon, I'll write it down with my fancy marker here. Thursday show bracket. No, not Backett. Bracket challenge. There we go. There. I won't forget. It's right in front of my face. Speaking of things that are right in front of my face, by the way, 3 scouting reports went out to subscribers today. They are available on YouTube, so if you want to watch the next 3. Tomorrow we're having our game tape on the Ruck Brothers come out. So yeah. Following up on Daniil Prokhorov, I imagine the Islanders might want him in New York sooner than later. Yeah, sure. I don't know. I don't trust Russian development as much as I can throw it. It's an abstract concept, so I don't know if you can throw it in the first place, but I don't trust it. Look at the fancy person in here with the perfect bracket 2 years ago that lasted into the second round. Well, la dee da. I don't know. I'm tired. Yes, both brothers are in the game tape. So they came. It was like it's entirely a joke, but this after the fact, I was making a joke that it was like the Step Brothers scene where they're interviewing as a team. That always cracked me up. But yeah, it's both brothers, and it's good, man. I watched it the other day, and yeah, shout out to AJ who puts those together, and Tony Ferrari, who I believe popped up in the chat. You know, good stuff. So anyway, with that, we're running past 10 p.m. Thanks very much for watching. This was a lot of fun. Does AJ know them? Yes, he does, actually. Believe it or not, he does. Thanks very much for watching. This was a lot of fun. I hope you enjoyed the rankings. If you the Leafs blew the lead. Of course they did. They're the saddest team in the league. But yeah, if you like the rankings, definitely let me know. If you have any thoughts, definitely let me know too. I want to hear from you. I'll check out the players people have mentioned. If you want, you can get a subscription to scouching.ca where you'll get access to all of our fun little goodies and toys. All our data packages for drafted, undrafted prospects, all kinds of fun stuff that you can check out there. Or you could just sign up for a YouTube membership and then just email me or DM me on Twitter, where I will give you your free account on Scouching, or give you your account on scouching.ca. You'll get into our Discord server. It's all kinds of fun stuff going on in there all the time. So thanks very much, and we'll see you Thursday afternoon, 2 p.m. Eastern. We'll do our bracket challenge then and talk playoff preview. Okay, toodles.